All right, so we're diving into the world of CBD hemp flower today, specifically with Hempex. We've got a whole stack of articles and briefing documents here, so get ready for a serious deep dive.
Yeah, looks like quite the rabbit hole.
It does. So before we get lost in the weeds, what's got you interested? What's the big deal with Hempex and their approach to this whole CBD flower thing?
Well, I think what's really intriguing is their focus on quality and transparency. It's not just about selling a product. They're really trying to educate people, about different strains, cannabinoids, the whole nine yards.
Right, and you can kind of get that sense just from skimming through their materials. They talk a lot about cultivars, terpene profiles, even legal considerations. It's pretty impressive.
Exactly. And that's what sets them apart, in my opinion. They're not shying away from the complex stuff. They're embracing it.
So for someone who might be new to this whole world, right, what's the quick pitch? Why Hempex over any other company in this space?
Hempex is all about CBD hemp flower, but they're really into the science of it. They focus on cultivating very specific strains to get unique cannabinoid profiles. So it's not just like, here's some generic CBD, they're tailoring it for specific needs and effects.
Okay, so they're being intentional about the types of plants they're growing, like almost like with wine or coffee, right?
Precisely. Think of it like different varieties of grapes producing different wines. That's their whole thing with cultivars.
Gotcha. Different cultivars mean different experiences.
Exactly. Different flavors, different potential effects. It's all about finding the right strain for your needs.
So they've got a variety. Now, I did notice they're offering everything from single pounds all the way up to those massive, like 500-pound super sacks. Who are they targeting with those bulk options?
So those are definitely geared toward like businesses, people who are creating their own products, extractors, that sort of thing.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Bulk buying obviously means bigger cost savings.
Uh-huh.
Did they happen to provide any specifics on that front, like potential profit margins, for example?
They did. They had some really interesting data on the economics of using their bulk biomass, especially for entrepreneurs looking to create their own CBD products. We should definitely dive into that later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's some valuable information right there.
Absolutely. But even for the everyday user, just understanding these nuances of cultivars, terpene profiles, all of that, it can really elevate your experience. And that's what Hempex seems to be all about.
It's like they're saying, we're not just selling you a product, we're giving you a whole education here.
Exactly. They want you to be an informed consumer, which is refreshing, honestly.
Totally. Okay, so we've established that Hempex is all about quality, variety, and education. But let's get into the nitty-gritty here. What are some of the standout strains they offer, and what makes them so unique?
Well, they've got quite the lineup. There's this one called Forbidden V and another called Pine Walker OG, and these are particularly interesting because they're high in CBDV, which is a cannabinoid that's been getting a lot of attention lately.
CBDV. All right, so we're going beyond the CBD basics here. What's the deal with this CBDV?
Well, the research on it is still pretty new, but it's showing a lot of promise for certain therapeutic applications, especially when it comes to neurological conditions.
Interesting. Okay, so definitely something to keep an eye on. What else have they got?
Let's see. They've got Bubba Kush, which is always a classic, and then they have one called Cakeberry Brulee.
Cakeberry Brulee. Okay, now you're just making me hungry.
Right. It does have a certain ring to it. And then there's Pink Lemonade, which...
Pink Lemonade. Okay, you've got to tell me more about this one.
Well, each of these strains has its own unique flavor profile and potential effects, and that's where those terpene profiles we were talking about earlier come into play.
Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff. So these terpenes, they're basically like essential oils for cannabis, right?
Yeah.
I know they're responsible for the aroma and flavor, but what about their effects?
You got it. They're like the aromatic compounds that give each strain its unique scent. But here's the thing. Terpenes don't just smell good. They actually interact with the cannabinoids, like CBD, and can influence their effects on us.
Oh, wow. So it's like a tag team situation.
Exactly. It's what's known as the entourage effect, the combination of terpenes and cannabinoids working together to create a more well-rounded experience.
So it's not as simple as just looking at the CBD percentage. You got to consider the terpenes too.
Exactly. Two strains might have the same CBD content, but completely different effects based on their terpene profiles.
That makes so much sense. Okay, let's break down some of these strains. You mentioned Bubba Kush. What's the deal with that one?
Bubba Kush is a classic known for its relaxing effects, and it gets its earthy, almost coffee-like aroma from a terpene called caryophyllene.
Caryophyllene. That sounds familiar.
You might recognize it from black pepper or cloves. It's also been studied for its potential anti-inflammatory properties.
Okay, so there's more to it than just a nice smell. These terpenes are actually doing some work. Now, you mentioned cakeberry brulee. That just sounds delicious. What's the story there?
Oh yeah, this one's a real treat for the senses. It has a sweet, berry-like aroma thanks to terpenes like linalool and limon.
Lenaloo, isn't that found in lavender?
Yes, it is. And it's known for its calming and relaxing effects.
So it's like aromatherapy and CBD all rolled into one.
Exactly. And then there's pink lemonade, which we briefly touched on earlier.
Oh yeah, with a name like that, it better be good. You've got to give me all the details on this one.
Pink lemonade is definitely a standout. It has this vibrant, citrusy scent thanks to high levels of limon, which is known for its mood-boosting properties.
Okay, so pink lemonade for when you need a little pick-me-up. Got it.
Exactly. And this is where Hempex's commitment to education really shines through. They provide all this information about terpene profiles and even suggest ways to incorporate different strains into your routine based on your desired effects.
So they're not just selling you a product, they're curating a whole experience.
Precisely. But it's not just about individual users. Remember those profit margin calculations for bulk biomass?
Oh, right. We were going to dive into the business side of things. Let's talk numbers.
According to their data, a single pound of premium CBD flower, like that pink lemonade we were talking about, retails for around $900.
Okay, that's a decent chunk of change.
Right. But when you buy their bulk biomass, that cost per pound drops significantly.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does that translate into actual profit for someone who's, say, making their own CBD oil?
They actually gave an example of a hypothetical CBD oil production scenario, and the numbers were pretty impressive. Assuming a decent extraction rate, that bulk biomass could yield a substantial profit margin even after factoring in production costs.
Wow, so there's serious potential there for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And it highlights another key takeaway from all of this, understanding the different applications for CBD hemp flower. It's not just about smoking it. It can be used to create a whole range of products.
So whether you're a consumer looking for a specific experience or an entrepreneur wanting to create a CBD line, Hempex has got you covered.
Precisely. They're catering to a diverse market with a strong emphasis on quality and transparency, which is commendable.
For sure. Speaking of transparency, we touched on the legal complexities earlier. What are some things people should be aware of, especially if they're buying CBD flower online?
That's a crucial point, and Hempex does a great job of addressing those legal considerations in their materials.
What were some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, they really emphasize that even though hemp-derived CBD flower is federally legal, it's crucial to understand your local laws because some states and municipalities have stricter regulations than others, especially when it comes to shipping and possession.
Right, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly. And they really hammer home the importance of doing your due diligence. They even recommend consulting with a legal expert in your area just to be on the safe side.
That's always good advice, especially for larger purchases or business ventures. You don't want to get caught in illegal gray areas.
Exactly. And it all ties back to their overall message of transparency and informed decision-making. They're invested in building a sustainable industry, and that starts with education.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from terpenes and cultivars to profit margins and legal considerations. It's clear that Hempex is really trying to be a leader in the CBD hemp flower space. But there's one thing we haven't touched on yet: marketing. What are they doing to stand out in what seems to be an increasingly crowded market?
That's a great question. And from what I've seen, their marketing strategy aligns perfectly with their overall philosophy, education first.
So no flashy slogans, no outrageous claims, just good old-fashioned education.
Exactly. It's all about empowering the consumer, right?
Yeah.
Giving them the information they need to make smart choices, like explaining what terpene profiles are, what cannabinoid content means, even breaking down those legal gray areas we talked about.
Yeah, it makes sense. You build that trust by being straight with people, especially in an industry like this where there's so much misinformation floating around.
100%. And it seems to be working for them. I mean, they've had some really successful marketing campaigns centered around educational content like blog posts, infographics, even video tutorials.
I love that they're meeting people where they're at, providing valuable information in an accessible way. Okay, so for our listeners who's been furiously taking notes this whole time, if they only remember 3 things from this deep dive, what would you say those are?
Okay, 3 key takeaways. Number 1, not all CBD flower is created equal. Hempex is going above and beyond with their focus on cultivars, terpenes, targeted cannabinoids, all of that. Number 2, whether you're a casual user or an entrepreneur, you've got to understand the nuances of these different strains, right? That's how you unlock the full potential of this plant. And number 3, don't mess around with the legal stuff. Hempex is big on transparency and compliance, but it's always smart to double-check those local regulations, maybe even consult with a legal expert, just to be safe.
Solid advice. It sounds like Hempex has really thought this through, from the way they grow their plants to the way they educate their customers.
Absolutely. They're approaching this industry with a level of, I don't know, sophistication and responsibility that you don't always see.
They're in it for the long haul, not just the quick buck.
Exactly, and that's what makes them so interesting to follow.
Well said. So, on that note, what do you see for the future of this whole CBD hemp flower world? Any predictions based on what we've uncovered about Hempex and the industry as a whole?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But if I had to guess, I think we're going to see a lot more specialization,
Right.
like hyper-targeted products for specific needs.
Like CBD flower for focus, CBD flower for sleep, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And as the research expands and consumers become more educated, that demand for personalized CBD experiences is only going to grow.
It's an exciting time to be a part of this world, that's for sure.
It really is. And thanks to companies like Hempex who are prioritizing education and transparency, I think the future of CBD hemp flower is looking pretty bright.
Well, there you have it. A deep dive into the world of Hempex and CBD hemp flower. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the science behind these plants to the business of bringing them to market. And now, armed with this knowledge, you're ready to explore the exciting world of CBD hemp flower for yourself. Until next time, happy exploring.